Thank you for coming to check out another episode of the Stashcast, where we have interesting conversations with interesting people. Focused around the world of commercial real estate and prop tech, the Stashcast is brought to you by Needle. What if you could use data and analytics to predict real estate transactions? You can with Needle. Come check it out, Needle, NEDL.us, to learn more. All right, I am super excited today. We have Brent Crawford, who's the founder and managing principal of Crawford Hoying. Brent, thank you so much for coming to join us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So you have been in my career. At first, when I first got started, I didn't know who you were. And then all of a sudden, I saw you doing these massive deals. I was like, this guy is incredible because it seemed to me like you just rose up out of nowhere. I know who you are, but for the folks at home, maybe give a quick background of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. I will start by saying I grew up in Batavia, Ohio.
There you go.
Yeah, we're down in the Cincinnati market now. Part of that was having grown up in the general area, always wanted to get back there. But yeah, we're a developer located here in Columbus, Ohio. Actually, in Dublin, Ohio is our headquarters. Where I'm sitting in Bridge Park right now, which is our signature development. And we're in the mixed use business, but also industrial hotels, standalone office, which might sound like a dirty word now. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But yes, proud to be in this market with the team that we've built. We're also a general contractor, so we build all of our own product for the most part as well, and really have built a team of about 300 individuals here that work in both our corporate office and in the field, and allows us to give the flexibility to really truly from ground up in all the different verticals, and really in most asset classes at this point.
That's amazing. I'm sure you've surrounded yourself with a great team, unless you're Superman and a superhuman and can do it all yourself,
It's all about the great team.
for sure. So how did if you looked at your link if you look at your LinkedIn profile, you're in college and then you have Crawford Hoying. So how did you get started?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can certainly sit here today and say this. If people ask the question all the time, did you dream of this? No, I did not dream of this. I never thought this. I will say that I didn't not dream of it. And it's an important distinction because there are certainly people who limit their minds about what's possible. They live in a world of fear about what could go wrong versus what could go right. And I've never really done that. I've never said, hey, I can't do this. I just let myself take it sort of day by day and let things happen naturally and live in that world of positivity about what's possible. We have a phrase, do great things with great people, you get great results. And going back, it really served me well over my lifetime. It really truly did start with a single house on Ohio State campus. I came from a very modest background. My parents didn't have the money to help me get started. And the quick version is that my landlord, my joke was my second sophomore year. I lived in the first house he owned. And I sold over that first year where he bought a second and a third house all on the same street. And I was helping him a little bit with some landscaping and inside work, and caught the bug. I'm like, this is really interesting. I think I could do this. And I went to my parents and asked, hey, I would like to purchase a house, move my friends in with me. And they said, that's great, but we don't have any money. We can try to help co-sign on a loan, but not sure that'll work. And so I was dating my girlfriend, now my wife, and I said, I'd like to do this. Do you think your grandmother would help? And so her grandma loaned me $1,500 to buy the first property. And that's really how the business started. I think once I closed on that particular property, my buddies moved in. I think I was netting about $500 a month at the time, which seemed like a fortune. And that was really, in that moment, I knew what I was doing the rest of my life. I obviously stayed at Ohio State, finished and got my degree, but the entire time at that point, now the dream was on about what I wanted. I will also say again, I didn't dream I would be sitting here in a place like Bridge Park, but I had this vision. If I had one, what if I had 10 properties? I can have a really nice retirement later. And once I got to 2 and 3 and 4 and saw how the model worked and what could be possible, then again, my mind was open to letting it be as big as it wanted to be. And certainly lots of lessons learned from then to now, but it's been an incredible journey. I've loved every second of it, even during the really hard times. Obviously, we started 1994 was the first property I purchased. And to see what we've gone through, the journey is the fun part, including the ups and the downs. It wouldn't feel so good during the good times if you didn't have the bad times. And so that journey and the process we've been through to get to where we are today has been a ton of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. So so you started with one and then you started accumulating more. Didn't I hear though that you started going after some of the broken, or there's a builder in town in
Yeah.
Columbus who would build a bunch of identical buildings and then sell them off to separate investors. You I heard that you went and just started accumulating those, and how did that go about?
Sure. So, yeah, I had all my campus properties, and they were, I think at one point, at 100 and some individual properties on campus. Really, by the time around when I graduated college, and recognizing that my wife and I had moved out to Hilliard and was driving back and forth constantly of all these individual properties. And while they're just one small 4 or 5 bedroom house, or maybe a duplex or a triplex, the reality is that's not very efficient. And
Right.
you have to understand, at the time I was really doing 100% of all the maintenance, all the leasing. And so it just became a challenge. I thought there's got to be a better way for me to do this and be a little more consolidated. And at the same time, when luck happens in life, I will say put yourself in a position to be lucky. But when I started most of my purchase, the market was down. And so when I decided I wanted to make the move, the market was up. And I sold a lot of those properties on campus, really almost all of them, pretty quickly, and then started to buy these properties you're referencing, which Don Kenny had built. Don Kenny's, to my knowledge, I think the largest apartment builder in Columbus, Ohio history.
Yeah.
He's 40,000 plus units he's built here in this marketplace. And so I went to them. They had a property for sale. I called and went and met with them. And I didn't really have the necessary funds to buy some of these bigger complexes, but was able to develop a relationship with them, and they developed confidence in me. And so we did some really creative financing structures as it relates to seller carry and even commissions. I was a broker or an agent at the time. So really build my commissions in some seller financing, and it allowed me to pull off some larger, to go from two, $300,000 deals, $1 million deals. And then the deals, some of those first deals with them were 5 million, 6 million, 7 million. And I was still in my, early 20s at the time, early to mid 20s. And so it took a lot of confidence on their part to trust that I was going to be able to pull this off. And that'll be a lot about what our story is. It's confidence and trust in relationships. Because if you're able to build those and build trust with people, and they have confidence that you can do what you say you're going to do,
Mhm.
then people are willing to take a chance on you. And Don Kenny specifically did take a chance on me and really helped launch my business. And that he had the confidence. He could have said, you know what? I'm going to sell this to somebody else, get all my money right now, and be out. And I'm sorry, I can't help you. And maybe I'm confident I would have still done great things, but he certainly helped me in the fact that he had confidence in to do those structures.
That's awesome. And I guess that's an example that everybody's watching you. They're not necessarily paying attention to your every move or things like that, but your reputation, I would assume, preceded you at that point. Who's this guy? Oh, he's doing a bunch around campus. Okay, now he's trying to do other things and just
I
prop.
don't at that time was the case. You mentioned that we popped up, but we've always, for a very long time, we're very under the radar. And certainly when I started, was fully under the radar. I didn't share with anybody. There were no news articles. I just went about my business, and so it was more about me convincing him that I know what I was doing. There was no track record for them other than me to point to some properties I'd purchased on campus.
Okay.
Again, it was more about that one-on-one relationship that I'd built with him over meetings and discussions. And I think he had an affinity for me. I had one for him. He was the godfather, as I said, really of
Yeah.
Ohio apartments. And so I think maybe he did see a little bit of himself in me, because he started in the same manner on Ohio State campus buying property. And so we developed a really good relationship. And there were times certainly where he was hard on me and tough on me as we built our relationship about how I was doing my business and what I needed to be doing. And have always appreciated that advice and respected him for it.
What were some of those things that he maybe shared with you or was maybe tough on you, so to speak, if you can
It's just
share?
really about being diligent about the process and doing exactly what we say we're going to do. And I take tremendous pride in that. And I think it's really got us to where we are today. But really seeing somebody else having achieved that and seeing how they built their business, and really just an emulator for what I thought it could be after I met him. And so, hey, you started the same way with really a single property, humble background, and then was able to build it to what he did both then and now. And I think Don's around 80 years old and still is very active. And talking about under the radar, he's probably the biggest apartment builder in Columbus, Ohio. I'm pretty confident of it. And no one would
Yeah.
even at this point.
Yeah, no, I think you're I think you're right. So you built or you acquired garden apartments, you've cycled in and out of some of those, and then you mentioned you're building all your own stuff. How did you make the transition from owning and operating existing to saying, "Hey, I want to go out and build stuff"?
Sure. We got up to about 8,000 apartments in Columbus, were just ones that we had acquired at our height from the multifamily side. But I think as we built that portfolio, there were certainly periods as obviously seeing Don Kenny do it, Don Casto, all of those organizations I became friendly with over the years as we had purchased a lot of property from them and seeing their success. And then really just as you see buildings going up and you're driving around, I was always interested. Who's building that? Why did they choose to build it like this? Why did they choose that product? And it felt like this is something we can do as the organization grew. With that being said, you don't just start building things, right? You have to have the expertise and knowledge and background. My partner, Bob Hoying, and I joined together. We met in 1997, formally came together in 2002, and his father and two partners own a construction company. And so through the process, Bob, having finished up in the NFL, and was looking to get in the real estate business. And met randomly. But as we built our relationship, and then his father had decided he wanted to sell the construction company. So we made the decision to buy a relatively small shop at that time, knowing that, hey, we can use this as a pivot point for this company and for us to take us to the next level. So we bought that company in 2004, I believe, started to do some developments, some small developments because we are just getting in the game. And then, of course, 2008 happened and really were on hold for about 3 years, 3 to 4 years. The construction company was still building, but as far as developing our own product at our own properties, obviously that was a very traumatic time for anybody in our business. And people think it's hard now. This is just a little tiny fraction of what it was. And so that's really how it happened. We acquired that company. And then along the way, it's really about talent. And we always say our greatest assets aren't our properties, but our people. And I know it's corny, but it's just an absolute fact. We wouldn't be here today without just some amazing talents. And we've got Nelson Yoder, who's one of our principals in the development side of the business, is an architect. I think by many accounts, a genius. So he came on board in 2012, 2011, 12, and then he brought some other architectural talent with him. So now we're combining the general contracting side with the architectural talent. I had the capital side and the financing side, the investor network in order to bring all of those pieces together. And then, of course, that team's grown substantially since then as well.
Yeah, is that so? Was your construction company is Bracket Builders? Is that what
Yeah,
you
correct.
purchased?
Yep. Still is today. We
Okay.
just named the place, and it's run by Tom Hoying, who's Bob Hoying's brother, as an incredible leader and of that individual organization. Does a great job.
Hmm. Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't know that Bob was in the NFL. Who did he play for?
He did, yeah. So he was at Ohio State, had an incredible career at Ohio State, and then left and was drafted in the third round by the Philadelphia Eagles. I was there for about 3 years, and I got traded to the Raiders and was there for 3 years.
Nice. What position did he play?
He's quarterback.
Oh, sweet.
So he handed off to Eddie George when Eddie George won the Heisman that year.
Oh, okay.
Bob did have the all-time touchdown passing record for a long time, which was just past. In fact, it popped up on my memories here yesterday. He had the all-time passing, most touchdowns in Ohio State history up until about 7 years ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, I am not an Ohio native, so I'm a little naive on some of that history.
no, understood.
Um, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a great combination. I'm sure between the two of you, your networks are it was probably like a one-on-one makes 3 or 5, something like that, I would imagine.
Yeah, we hit it off right from the beginning. One from a personality perspective, we were actually got randomly paired at a golf course on a day. We both went out to play individually. I got the course. I never play with strangers, and I didn't want to do it, but it was a beautiful day. I remember it was a Tuesday. We both went out to the course, and he was on the tee box, and I knew him. He did not know me because we graduated the same year, and he was at the time at Ohio State University was the golden boy.
Yeah.
And so we played an entire round. I never mentioned once that I knew who he was, a lot about what I did. And so then by the end of the round, we said, "Hey, let's connect for dinner," and we did, and that was the history after that.
That's amazing. That's a great story. Hmm. It's funny, those chance encounters.
Yeah.
I met my wife in a networking group, and who would have thought? So, who would have
Right.
thought a round of golf changed your
Yeah.
life?
Yep.
So, you I'll say you, but you and your team have done some amazing developments. You did Water Street Flats in Dayton. You've done Bridge Park. We're live from Bridge Park right now. How so the root of my question is selfish because I'm starting to do a little bit of development on my own. I'm doing a just a 6 unit renovation. And when I was in high school, I was a wrestler. And when my coach knew that we were gonna get our asses kicked, he'd be like, "Now this is a learning experience." So I went into this knowing it was a learning experience, but I think similar to you, the plan is not to just do one and done. I'd like to do many more. So how did you approach those? Because those are not simple projects, even if it's just straight apartments. There's a lot of moving parts.
There are, yeah, and I think it's using all of the experience. We wouldn't have started this. I couldn't have done this 20 years ago. I couldn't have probably done it 15 years ago. And so we used all the experience from doing again, starting with $5 million, 10 million, 15, 30, 50, and so forth. I see them all as people get caught up in the numbers and they get scared and they're afraid, meaning they see a 7-figure number and feel one thing. They see an 8-figure number and their heart starts to palpitate. And they see a 9 and just absolutely, there's no way, it's not possible. I don't think of it like that. It's just a number. The process to get to do what you're going to do to be successful is the same, whether it's a 7, 6, 7, 8, or 9 or 10 figure number. And that's how, we build a team around execution. Uh, and so the size doesn't necessarily matter and how big a development is. But to your point is they are very complicated. And in order to get them right, I think what you're doing is the right thing. You have to start and go through the process. And especially if you can do a lot of the work yourself and see, how do you replace a toilet? How do you put a new sink in? All of those things matter because over time, then you take all of those little individual pieces of knowledge that you've gained by doing all of those and apply them to new things. And it also matters as you're growing a team and people. I think I've gotten certainly pretty far away from doing any of the work at this point. It's been a long time, but most of our team knows that for a very long time, I did all of the maintenance work. I did, all of the leasing. And so they understand I know what their job is and how it can be difficult. And I think they respect me for that. And so again, using combining that then with the knowledge that I've gained, and really again back to the people portion, as we've acquired these assets of amazing people, it's allowed us to do these more complex things. Really, what we're looking for too is for developments or situations where people are too afraid to do it. They're not seeing the diamond in the rough. And I'll use Bridge Park as an example. We're in Dublin, Ohio, one of the richest municipalities in the United States, an incredible area. And this piece of land had been for sale for years and years. It was a defunct driving range that had closed, a restaurant that had closed, a failed shopping center.
Hmm.
And these are things we've certainly learned over time. So what I'm telling you now, I know certainly more today than I did when we thought about doing this. So we bought the first property in 2012 to start this development. But starting to put the pieces together of what makes a successful, dense mixed use development, it's obviously you got to have the right demographics and location. We have a densely populated area with high paying jobs. We've got Cardinal Health, the 15th ish largest company in the US is, I can see it out of my window here. Wendy's International World Headquarters is to my right. I could see it out from the other side over here. We've got Honda up the road, the largest facility, I believe, in North America is pretty close to us, and then lots of other companies. And so we start to look at that. We've got a municipality that's got a lot of money, meaning to help participate because these things don't happen without public participation. And so and then also just even the surrounding communities, we got Hilliard and Powell and Worthington. It just goes on and on. There's a lot of bodies around here. And then we looked at what the product was in the marketplace. And in this case, Dublin hadn't allowed any new apartments in roughly 20 years. So we knew there was a shortfall there. We had a massive shortage in restaurants in the market. Part of it's because they were development here is challenging. It was really challenging then. So building enough product for all of the uses was a challenge. And then we recognized, hey, this was especially at the time, but it's not changed now, which people will be surprised by. If you build the right office, it will lease. And
Sure.
so we saw Dublin's only second to the central business district in terms of office in Columbus, Ohio. We've certainly added significant amounts to that. But yeah, so it's just really, they are complicated. And I think one of the keys to development for something like this is flexibility. You have to have flexibility in your development plan because as Bridge Park has evolved, and it's going to be $1 billion plus development as we finish out over the next few years. It's ebbed and flowed as it relates to the product type. I never would have believed we have as much office as we do. We have 600,000 square feet completed and essentially fully leased. And we have two more office buildings planned, one of which is already 50% leased. And we're still 9 to 12 months from starting construction on that building. And we switched. We had originally had more apartments, but office is such a generative piece to vibrancy during the day of how people are leaving the building to go out for lunch and dinner and cocktails with clients and so forth. And so it's these developments are complex in that they're an evolving organism. You have to have the exact right mix between residential and commercial and bars and restaurants and walkability and parking. All those things really matter. And at the same time, you have to have, a symbiotic relationship with your city to pull these off
Yeah.
because they're committing in a lot of cases a lot of funds in order to do it, whether it's in a TIF district or it's abated. The city has to be on board because to pay for parking, our key here is we have free parking that's readily accessible. And that only works if the city wants what you want to deliver and can help participate financially.
Yeah. I've been there a couple of times, and it was amazing to me that you have these massive garages and they're all free, and it's great. So that kind of brings me to my next question. How do you go about navigating those conversations with the municipalities? Because it seems they want development and they want housing. Um, but oftentimes, no, we don't want to give you any incentives. You just got to build it on your own. How do you, is it educate, or how do you bring those folks along to say, this is what it's going to take?
Yeah, education is a huge part of it. We're municipalities reach out to us pretty regularly. Either a private landowner within a municipality or the municipality themselves reach out and say, "Hey, we've been to Bridge Park or we've been to Water Street or some of our other developments," and they say, "Would you bring it here?" We ask some basic questions right out of the gate. Do you have a TIF district set up? Are you willing to do an abatement? And I think the general public, not the business thing, greedy developer immediately. But the reality is these things are very expensive to build and they are very risky, right? While we're in a great business, it's also one of the riskiest businesses you can possibly be in
Yeah.
because if you make any number of mistakes, you can be in deep trouble. So the reality is in order to do these in Ohio in general, to build a parking structure privately just is it's not possible. I don't think a single parking garage in the state of Ohio is going to be built now or in the future by private funds. Just the cost is too high. And our rents in the Ohio market, people complain about where our rents are for rental. We're very low relative to many of the other markets where you could possibly pay for a parking garage because the rents substantiate it. And so in order, if we wanted to build privately, we'd have to take our residential rents up dramatically and the market just won't support it here in this market. So it's education, getting them to understand what are the benefits. And I'll say this, Dublin, Ohio, while they can be a challenge to develop in, they were very smart in creating what they call the Bridge Street District here, which includes the Bridge Park area. And understanding that if they didn't an office park centric type of development, so office was in one location, retail in another, residential in another, and the world's changing and they recognize these older legacy office parks were going to start to diminish and they were going to lose these office tenants. Those office tenants are the ones paying the payroll taxes, which are the ones, supporting the paths and the parks and all the things that people want.
Yeah.
And the both party education say, hey, let us build this density in order to keep your office tenants, keep your young people here so that when the older people are moving out of the Muirfields and places like that, there are young people to buy here to buy those homes. And so that's an education. But I'll say this, Dublin, before we started thinking about Bridge Park, had started to think about how do we ensure that people stay in Dublin, Ohio, that they visit, that we keep our tax base here. And I think they would say it's been a massive home run for them. We've both kept companies that would have moved out of Dublin to other markets, or we've attracted other companies, both from out of Columbus and some from out of the country that have located their headquarters into Bridge Park. And so those are huge dollars coming to the city's coffers to pay for the parks and all the other things that people love about Dublin.
Hmm. And how have, I imagine that you probably have some sort of role in the attraction of the Intels of the world, or or do you? Imagine they come and see what you guys have done.
I
And
mean, not in, I wouldn't say Intel, but yeah, the question still, yes, we're able to attract businesses, some which aren't in Bridgeport
Sure.
because, and they're telling us this specifically. They located in the area because this is an area that's great for their employees. It's where people want to come to, and businesses, in order to succeed in today's world, need to be near things that people want to be, that people want to visit and stay in. And yeah, it certainly is helpful, and it brings vibrancy to the entire region. And the more vibrant the region is, the more likely it is you're going to get headquarters here. I mean, not to bash any other city, but some of these headquarters that have been moving here, there's a reason they aren't choosing Youngstown, right? You got to have a vibrant market that's growing, that's improving and gaining population and vibrancy. One, they need the employees, right? They need access to educated workers and skilled workers. And we have those here. Columbus, Ohio is one of the fastest growing cities in the US, which people are always surprised by. But we have this element now. It's feeding on itself, and that one attracts another. And as you get, Intel decides to come, which means we need more development to support all of the workers, which creates more vibrancy. And as those people come, you need more housing, which then requires more restaurants. And that's how Bridge Park has been. As we've added one and another, it requires us to add another. And we look at it like with our hotels. We have 2 hotels here, which are highly successful. We're working on a third. Now, we wouldn't have guessed we would have needed 3 hotels here. But as we've been successful and people want to visit, now this is the wedding destination location.
Right.
People get married here. They have all of their rehearsal dinners. They're here for the entire weekend. And that's become a thing. And then now the corporate headquarters use this to, not just for their employees, but when they bring in guests from out of town and clients, they put them all up here because they know their clients are going to have a great time.
Yeah.
Want to Dublin, Ohio, want to visit. And they're staying here, even if they're maybe the headquarters is 20 minutes from here, because they know they're going to have a great experience.
Yeah, it's all walking distance. You don't have to worry about catching an Uber or anything.
No, it's,
You've literally created like a miniature downtown on an old driving range, which
yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah. If you could have been here this last Friday and Saturday night, I just walked out, and I'm humbled by it every day. I'm blown away. I literally walk around like, this is real. There were thousands of people in the streets on Friday and Saturday night. Now, it's true of virtually any night, but the amount of people that were out and about, really the pride that gives us as we see, you can build the buildings, and the buildings can be one thing, but that's not really what makes it great. It's the vibrancy on the street and the amount of people walking in and out of buildings and in and out of bars and restaurants, and the people having fun and laughing. And that's what feels really good. That's the hard part to create. The easiest part is building the buildings. The harder part is creating a vibrancy and an energy that people want to come visit.
Do you think that one of the attraction or one of the advantages that Columbus has over, say, Cincinnati is that the uh, county borders roughly match the city borders?
Yeah, that's certainly there. It's much more contiguous here than it is in Cincinnati. Your neighborhoods are much more disconnected than they are here. And I think that absolutely makes a difference. And I'll say one of the other things, again, we're active in Cincinnati. We purchased the banks
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, and we're working hard to take that to the next level. It has its own challenges, as you may imagine, but we're ultimately confident in the success of that development surrounding area. But it takes collaboration. And I think that's the difference between Columbus, Ohio and Cincinnati right now is there appears to be much more sort of infighting in Cincinnati and people just not working together, people fighting. Where in Columbus, you want to get something done, everybody comes together, whether it be city government down, city of Columbus or city of Dublin working together, or the Columbus Partnership, which is one of the most powerful organizations in the US. And that's really a group of 75 CEOs that really come together to say, hey, how do we make Columbus better? And they're in every industry. And so when something needs to get done, like getting an Intel, Columbus put their hat in the ring for Intel pretty late in the game. And because everybody works together, people weren't infighting. We're able to very quickly coalesce and collaborate on a plan to bring something as massive as Intel to Columbus. I'm not confident that Cleveland or Cincinnati or other markets in the state of Ohio could have pulled it off, because if you're not working together, not rowing the same direction,
Yeah.
it makes it really difficult.
Yeah. I think you're right. Unfortunately for our fair city.
Yeah,
Uh,
I love Cincinnati. We're not just doing the banks. We're building a pretty good development on UC's campus. We have a hotel opening here in the next few months. We love the market. We're going to continue to build there. So I want to, yeah, we just want to see hopefully more collaboration and lessons learned when you all collaborate and work together, you can do great things.
Mhm. So that brings another point. You started with residential, but then you're in office and hotels. Like, how do you manage to keep a balance or a full understanding or finger on the
Yeah.
pulse of all these different products that you've got?
I think again, it's having the right people. And so we've hired, experts really in each facet of the business. And it's one of our competitive advantages that we're able to look at a site really quickly because all of the expertise is in-house.
Mhm.
Well, a landowner calls us and says, "Hey, we're interested in selling this property. Do you have interest in it?" I can immediately take that piece of paper, walk down the hall, whether it be our legal department, architects, interior design, then obviously our general contracting business, just our overall planning and just our operations people and say, "Hey, what does this site and need? What's the best use of this site?" Some developers, right? They might only do office, or they only do apartments, or they only do hotels, or they only do industrial. We can look at a site and say, "Hey, this is best for these two uses, these three uses, all the uses are a single use." And then we can execute one of those. Really, a great example of that is we had never done an industrial project in our life until about 3 years ago. And now we're heavily invested and involved in industrial buildings. We have multiple projects going right now. We're pretty heavy into the cold storage business,
Mm.
which is a very difficult and complicated business that very few people do. But we have some really smart people here who had one of our architects, Nelson Yoder, who I mentioned earlier, had done one in his previous life or been part of one as an architect. And we dug in on that and had a very successful first project. And now we have a partnership with one of the biggest cold storage partners in the country on doing multiple ones across the country. But point being is that you acquire these people who have expertises in various areas. And then it's about pulling it all together by building this infrastructure within the company to handle each one of those. It's not to say we've been perfect. We learn with every one that we do. And it also goes back to that fear thing. I think if I said to some of my other development friends, "Hey, do you want to do a cold storage building?" And be like, no, I don't want to do a cold storage building. I don't know anything about it. It's too scary. We don't think of it like that. What's the opportunity? What's the expertise we can bring in to accomplish this and then go do it? I think just so many people are just so afraid to fail.
So when you say cold storage, I think of produce, but is it much more than that?
It can be, it could be for medical purposes as well. So obviously a lot of medical products need to be kept at either cold or cold or freezer,
Mhm.
and same with produce, and it can be multiple applications there. So our first building that we did, Rickenbacker Airport cold storage building, the user that came in supplied to Starbucks with lots of their products in the Midwest, so they would all come in there and then be dispensed out from there.
Okay, that makes sense. Wow.
And by no means, I'll say this is a great example. You could ask me a question if you were a cold storage expert. You could ask me a question about cold storage, and I would probably be exposed relatively quickly my knowledge level. So
Yeah.
that comes down to having great team members and having a trust in their capabilities. We hire people and then let them do what they're great at
Mhm.
and find the organizational structure for them to be successful. Because there's absolutely, am I an expert in cold storage? I am not, but
Yeah.
we have team members that are, and that's what's most important.
Yeah. That's fascinating. It's like you acquire the talent or you bring in the talent and then you say, here's the overall of what we're trying to accomplish. Let's go figure out how to do it. And don't put any specific reins on, oh no, we
That
only have to do this, especially if somebody has expertise in something else. So,
I think flexibility is the key, not just in business, but in life, right? You have to be flexible and adapt to the situation. If you just stay so regimented and the market changes on you and moves, you're going to have a hard time succeeding in both business and life if you're not willing to be flexible.
mhm. um, so uh, back to maybe some of these projects that you've done. Is Bridge Park, is that all your own money? Is it all out of your pocket or?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, it is not. Yeah, we are a syndicator in that we do bring in other people's money. And that's the common path really for probably 90+% of developers
Mhm.
is that they're raising outside limited partnership money. We always act as the GP. We are the ones sourcing and signing on the debt. We are the majority owner, but we do bring in LP money as part of the process. And that's really, if there are so many keys. One is, again, I'll go back to people, but the other one is these partnerships and relationships we've developed on the equity side. So we have an excess of 300 investors that we work with, probably a key 30 to 50 who who are regular investors and do lots of projects with us. Both it starts from the high net worth individual family office all the way up to institutional partners that we work with. And we just try to match those dollars with projects that we know they're interested in, that make sense for them, that are diversified. So if an investor's in 30 deals, we don't let them be in 30 industrial deals. They're going to be in some hotels, some apartments, some office, some industrial. And so we're really trying to work with those groups. But that's absolutely, we would not be sitting here today without some of our key partners. Who
Mhm.
really, we built trust and relationships over the years, who believed in what we're doing and have the confidence, and really trust being the most important part. Because when you're dealing with other people's money, they have to trust you, and you have to never violate that trust or in any circumstance when it comes to other people's money. So we've been a good steward of their dollars over the years. We've made them a lot of money, and they know, one, that they can trust us, and two, that when times are difficult, we're going to step up and make it right. And that we have the ability to pull off really difficult things in difficult situations like '08 through 12, as an example.
Yeah. My next question was gonna be in the context of the past couple of years where it seems like everybody and their brother became a syndicator, how do you differentiate yourself? But you just laid it out. You just
Yeah, I think
did.
it's history, track record. All of our, we don't do any cold calling, never pick up the phone to call anybody once. It's all 100% referral based. So someone's told another person who's told another person. This has been organic over the 30 years. We just had our 30th anniversary this year. So it's just all been organic. And I'll go back to, I think it's worth a quick story. My first dollars in. So I bought the first house, but even then I'm like, I'm going to wait. I had a job at the time. I was giving plasma to make money, was making my rental income, but it's okay. If I could buy another house in 2 years, that'll be great. And what had happened is I had bought the first house. I went back to my high school in Batavia, was telling my history teacher about what I was doing. He could feel my passion and excitement for it. And he said, and I didn't know this about him at the time. He said, Brent, I own a decent number of rental properties here locally, and I'd be interested in investing with you. I hadn't even crossed my mind about other people's money at the time. And so I went back home and I found a house, $58,000 house right when I got home. And I called him back and I said, hey, I found a house and buying. Do you want to partner? He said, sure. And he said, how do you want to do it? I said, I don't have money, but I have effort that I can put into it. And so I said, how about you put all the money in, I do all the work, and we split the profits 50-50. And he said, sure, it sounds great. And so a quick portion to talk about trust and relationships and why they're so critical. As we went to close on that particular property, they had done the title work. I didn't even know what an LLC was at that point.
Yeah.
So as they were doing the title work and the day of the closing, they called, I saw it and it said it just had in my personal name, Brent Crawford, and it didn't have his name. So I called him and said, hey, they're going to have to redo the paperwork. We're going to push the closing. He said, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. You can just put it in your name. He then sent me a $58,000 wire to me. I closed in my name only, no paperwork. That's trust and relationships. So you talk about, somebody might say that was lucky, but it wasn't lucky, because the luck came because I'd built a relationship with him. He'd been my high school basketball coach, my junior high basketball coach. He was my least favorite teacher to start, and then my favorite by the end because he was hard on me. But we built that trust and relationship. And then with that money in hand, I was able to then go redo that house, sold the house, made really good money for him and me. And then I had built the trust that, hey, he can do this. And then he said, hey, here's some more money if you want to go do some more. And I think it's really important to understand it's all about relationships. It is all not just with them. I had to get my first loan at a bank. And so I walked in and I looked for 52 plus years old. I still look pretty young, and I looked really young then. And so when I walked into the bank, it appeared to be a 14-year-old kid coming in and asking for a loan. And so I had to really build that relationship with them and confidence that this young guy is going to be able to pull this off. And so I got to know the people at the bank and build it over time. And of course, success breeds confidence. And so once I was able to do it, it allowed me to go forward. But it is all about the whole business to me. And I think it's any business, but it's really true in our business. It's all relationship based. If you don't maintain quality relationships and do what you say you're going to do, your business will only last so long. And we've
Yeah.
seen that over the years. When things get difficult, there are businesses now or companies like ours in Ohio that aren't going to make it through this period. And it's not necessarily because the market's tough. It is, but it's as likely that they didn't build a strong base of relationships because when times are tough, that's what you got to lean on is those relationships. And if you haven't built those relationships, or frankly, you just weren't a great person, that's where it becomes more challenging. So, of all the things we harp on, building great projects, and yes, they got to make money, it's about being a good person. So, we generally only hire, if you're not a great person, that's the first thing we think about when hiring somebody. That's really what we're focused on. Are you a great person? We can teach you the skills, but are you a great person? Are you going to treat other people with respect within our company and outside of our company? So that when times get tough, like you're in the trenches, I do relate it to the military all the time. There's a reason they put people so closely together and they develop those relationships. Because when battle comes, and I'm not equating what we do to battle, but similarity simply being that things do get tough and then you got to rely on those relationships.
Yeah.
And think like lenders being specific when in these markets, right? Loans are coming due. People are calling loans. The values are severely depressed relative to where they were when most likely they purchased it or started, especially if they were on a 3 or 5 year floater. And so if you don't have a good relationship with your lender, they're far more likely to call the loan to put
Yeah.
you under pressure. If they don't like you, they don't trust you. And so we spend a lot of time, one, doing what we say we're going to do with the lender, always being transparent with them. And in exchange, when loans come due in a scenario like this, and especially a company of our size, we have lots of real estate. So there's loans coming due all the time. We don't have the worry that they're going to put their thumb down on us and say, hey, it's got to be paid off tomorrow because we've been good to them throughout the process.
Communicating, keeping
Yep.
them abreast, especially
Critical.
with construction lenders.
Yep. It's critical.
Yeah, I try and do that as much as I can. What do you do to stay so young and healthy? You look great.
I don't know. Genetics. I'm lucky. My dad's still doing great. Looks young. I don't know. Yeah. I think you got to like what you do. For one, I think it's really true in anything. I look forward to coming to work. This is a challenging period. It's hard. This is hard work. But when you do it with people who have a similar mindset and interest in doing great things, and that when they're just genuinely good people, it makes it easier to do. And so while our work is as stressful, it is stressful. There's no way around it, but it's made less stressful by knowing that you're really trying to accomplish something great and doing with people that you like. And hopefully at the end of the day, something like a Bridgeport we're as proud of Water Street in Dayton, probably more proud than we are of Bridgeport because of what it was, which is a very depressed area that's now turned into one of the most vibrant, if not the most vibrant part of Dayton.
Yeah.
Those are what bring me joy and make me happy. And it's really, I thoroughly enjoy creating opportunity for other people, meaning the people within our company that started and they were 22 and now they're 30 and they're thriving and they're running divisions and doing incredibly well. That lifts you up. That feels good for what we're trying to accomplish more so than maybe a building that we built. And I'll say outside that, just having a good friend network and still trying to have some fun golfing when I can and enjoying life. I have two great kids that live in Chicago that are doing well. And yeah, it just keeps me going.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So I guess my last question, given that you were previously a broker and you have a brokerage as part of your organization, what do you think the role of brokers is in, I guess, the real estate market in general?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's really important. They're the best brokers, and you've done a great job trying to foster relationships and reach out and stay in communication, putting relationships, putting people together. I think it's really important. It'll be interesting to see how it evolves. We've seen what's happened on the residential side with brokerages, and I'm not sure if it'll come to the residential side or to the commercial side for what we do. But yeah, I think they're critically important.
Yeah. Awesome. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate your time and spending some time with me. If they think they have the perfect site or development project or they want to invest with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, sure. So my email, bcrawford@crawfordhoying.com is the best. We pride ourselves in trying to be responsive when we can. But yeah, if there's an opportunity or even a question, we love to share our story and educate and talk about the business. And so yeah, anybody could feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Brent, I really appreciate you and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Same to you. Thanks so much.
All right.
Bye
Bye
bye.
now.